Okay, I'm going to call this meeting to order of the Evanston Preservation Commission. We have a quorum of 8 commissioners tonight. The City of Evanston's Preservation Ordinance empowers this body to safeguard our community's historic, cultural, and architectural heritage. The Commission encourages public participation and affords due process through public hearings on proposed landmark designations and applications for certificates of appropriateness. The ordinance requires commissioners to apply specific review standards and includes the ability to consider economic hardship and special merit as needed. We ask anyone who wishes to address the Commission to sign in and indicate the discussion item, designation, or application to be addressed. The first order of business tonight will be public comment on items listed under discussion on the meeting agenda. For old and new business, the chair of the commission will ask staff to read each case into the record. Once the case has been read into the record, the applicant presents an overview of the proposal, including evidence and testimony that support the applicable standards being met. The commissioners will then ask questions of the applicant. Following the questioning period, members of the public may speak toward the application, keeping their comments to 3 minutes or less. Following public comment, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond to any evidence or testimony against the application as it relates to the standards for review. After all parties have had a final opportunity to make objections or corrections, the commission closes the record and proceeds to deliberation and then a motion to approve the proposal or approve with conditions. A simple majority of the quorum present is required for a motion to carry. The first item on the agenda is public comment. Are there any members of the public here to speak this evening on an item for the discussion? Are you here to speak about something on the discussion agenda? Oh, okay, in that case, we will call you up when we get to your item. Anyone here to talk about the items on the discussion part of the agenda? Okay, seeing none. We will move on to new business, 2125 Sherman Avenue, Northeast Historic District, 23 Pres 0096. Could staff please read that into the record? Is the applicant here for 2125 Sherman? Okay, we will skip that and go to the next one. Sure. So we will move on to 1404 Judson Avenue, Landmark, Lakeshore Historic District, 23 Pres 0098. Could staff please read that into the record?
Errol Kirsch, applicant and architect, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to alter the home's north elevation's fenestration, construct a single-story addition and covered basement entry at the rear volume of the home's north elevation. The applicant further requests the following major zoning variations: to expand a non-conforming structure as it relates to bulk. Code Section 6652. A rear yard setback of 3.75 feet where 30 feet is required and the existing legally non-conforming condition is 2.75 feet. Code Section 6828A4, and building lot coverage of 33.25% where 30% is the maximum permitted and 31% is the existing legally non-conforming condition. Code Section 6827. The Preservation Commission is the determining body for the certificate of appropriateness. Code Section 288. The Preservation Commission may, at its discretion, make a recommendation to the Land Use Commission, the determining body for the proposed zoning relief. Code Section 219.4E. Mr. Kirsch, when you're ready.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you this evening on this topic. We have submitted this project first to the state of Illinois and received their approval for the addition that we're requesting here tonight. We feel that the existing building, as you can see, is on the top portion of that survey, and the addition we're referring to is at the north side, at the rear of that property. And the reason we've placed it at the rear of the property is because of the combination of the fact that there was no zoning code when this building was originally built, and therefore it was built very close to the rear lot line. However, there's also a preservation requirement of minimizing the amount or impact, if you will, of the addition at the front or street side of the property, which would be to your right on the site plan. So therefore, the location was placed, according to the zoning code, 5 foot south of the north property line and in line, or actually 1 foot east of the rear line of the building. As you also have noted, there is a existing non-conforming use, namely of the lot coverage. And I believe it's 31% at the moment, which is 1% over the amount allowed, and we are seeking, I think, 33%, maybe a tad more than the 33%. So therefore, there are two issues. One is the legally non-conforming use of the rear yard being exceeded by placing the building or the addition to the building at the rear of the property, which we feel is appropriate for what the historical situation is for the original architect and the building. I believe our effort to move any of that portion of the building to the front would be, I think, more visible and have more impact on the residents, including the existing residents we're speaking about. So therefore, it was placed at the rear. I'll be happy to take any questions on that set of information.
Are you finished?
I'm through.
Okay. So do commissioners have questions about the project itself? I understand that there are two things that we're thinking about, right, Kate? There's the certificate of appropriateness for the project itself, and then there's a recommendation if we would like to. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. You might want to do public comment as well if he's done with this.
Oh, right, I'm sorry.
I know we
Um,
have two members.
Hartnett. Okay, thank you. I see here we have two members of the public who would like to speak. Amanda Hartnett.
I will try to make the mask less annoying. I am Amanda Hartnett. We live at 1412 Judson. We are Brooks' neighbors to the immediate north. I'm not sure why we keep hearing that this is a rear yard. It's not. It's a side yard, and the side yard that it overlooks is our property. This plan has obviously been in the works for many months, and yet until we received the postcard, we were given absolutely no warning that this was even being considered. Brooke has had numerous opportunities by text, by phone, in person, to let us know that this was in the offing, that we might have comments, suggestions, welcome or otherwise. She had made no effort to do so, and it wasn't until Saturday that ourselves and two other neighbors met with her to get some details and to even look at any of the drawings. The lot size is already too small for the property, and that was certainly not uncommon pre-preservation, pre-zoning regulations. We understand that. But the owner proposes to further reduce this and to change the preservation guidelines that govern our area as a single-family house neighborhood. It's a multi-unit building under her plan. She will be renting other rooms, as she has done in the past, and we believe this plan is motivated not by a lack of interior space in the property, but as she said to us on Saturday, to make her money. In the basement apartment, it runs for the entire length of the house, and major construction will be required to make this single-family home into a two-bedroom apartment unit, which is separate from the house, but it effectively negates any description of calling it a single-family home. There is a public entrance also on the north side across from our property, and the color rendering that is in the plans has it facing us, not to the east, and it's certainly not in the rear. There's little gap between that proposed entrance and this proposed addition that's also part of the plan. There will also be air conditioning condensers which don't show up in those renderings. When Brooke texted us to ask us if we wanted to meet to discuss the plans, she referred to this as the little addition. The owner also said there would be terracing on the ground next to the entrance, but when I pressed her for details, she could offer none, as retaining walls, drainage, landscaping, all of which might affect our property adversely. And again, these plans have been around for many months, yet she could not pin down specifics on those. And when I expressed concern about decades-old plantings that we have that are on our side of the property, and that I was concerned about harm or having to move them, she could offer me no comment. When I brought up security and lighting precautions in what would now be a public entrance, Brooke seemed to have not considered any of those. Having a public yet secluded entrance adjacent to our property concerns us greatly. She mentioned one reason she likes the neighborhood is because it is dark. As we have had several attempted break-ins and there have been other burglaries in the neighborhood, we are less sanguine about this, and it adds to our hardship in this matter. Brooke told us that since this apartment will have a separate entrance, there is little limit to how many people to whom she could rent as long as they can prove that they are related to each other.
Pardon me, madam. We're at 3 minutes. Could you just,
I will go as
Finish.
fast as I can, thank you.
Yeah.
She can rent to 2 people or 10 in this basement underground apartment. She provided no information on how she will screen these tenants. When I asked if she considered this affordable housing, she said no, she was doing it to make money, and reminded us that she had been renting out to roommates for some years. We were aware of that. That's a common practice near the university. There is also to be work done in the attic, which we were not told about. We only saw that when we saw the plans yesterday. And the office addition, she made no mention to us, although she obviously does in the plans, of security concerns or privacy concerns. If she has security concerns about her clients acting up, imagine what we feel when we're 5 feet away. There's no public benefit to converting this architecturally historic single-family home on a historic block to a multi-unit dwelling. Several years ago, one of our neighbors asked if he could start his private business above his garage in a new garage. He was denied. If that was denied, why should this, which is infinitely more intrusive, be granted? It is not clear that she has a clear understanding of how much detail is involved and how this will affect us, as we are right there. And what are the discrepancies between what we were told on Saturday and what you have already heard and seen that we were never given any kind of privy to?
I'm so sorry, but we are at time.
Okay,
Could
we
you-
just believe that granting this major variance would have a substantial adverse impact on our use and enjoyment of this property and its values, as well as those of our historically important block, and she has been clear, this is about her additional income, not about anything else. Thank you.
Okay, next person on the list is Daniel Hartnett.
I'll waive my time.
Okay. He has asked to waive his time, for the record. Okay. I'm sorry? Was there anyone else who wanted to speak who is not on here? Okay. All right, next. Does anyone have any questions for the applicant?
Maybe it's in the material that's submitted, but the addition on the north side of the building seems to be an office space, which is entered from the outside, so it's not related to the residential uses of the house, and I'm wondering, since it is accessible from the outside, how exactly that space is intended to be used?
It is not accessible from the exterior. The addition is only accessible from the interior off of the kitchen. If you look at the proposed plan, not the existing
Oh, yeah,
plan,
the
you'll
stair-
see.
Just a clarification, so the stairway that we're seeing in that office is going up to the first floor?
Yeah, so
Right.
it goes up
That
to a
is correct.
space adjacent to the kitchen, but then what are the steps that seem to be going down under that sheltered,
Stuart,
going
what,
to the
Sure.
apartment.
what page are you on?
45.
45?
All right. What the gentleman is referring to is the entry for the one ADU unit, which is, per the code in Evanston, allowed in a basement of a single-family residence. And I believe it is also required that that unit be less than 1,000 square feet. And the lady who just commented is incorrect. You cannot have 10 people down there. You can only have 3 occupants unrelated to the ownership. And I believe that is what the code states. On the point you raised, Mr. Cohn, there's no access from the exterior, but the concern of the neighbor on the north is for the access to the ADU unit,
Yeah.
which is a depressed area. Yes, there are retaining walls. Yes, there is an escape window from that north face, and there is terracing. There is a motion light to be placed in that lower terracing area, and cameras at that location as well. Frankly, we added the cameras since Brooke Harper spoke with the neighbor on the north over this last weekend. We've only had to date the security light, which is motion detected.
Okay. Could I make a comment addressed to the neighbor who just got up and spoke? The place that you need to give that testimony is the zoning hearing, because there's zoning that's required. All we are asked to do is to comment on the addition that's being made to what is a historically significant house by a very important early 20th century Chicago architect who was a collaborator and a colleague of Frank Lloyd Wright and shared office space with him, Myron Hunt, who went out to California and then had a very distinguished career there. So we're going to look at it in terms of the standards for its compatibility with this historic shingled structure.
But I just did want to mention, though, it does say that we're supposed to give a recommendation around zoning, which we may, or, I mean, we can opt out of. I think that's maybe why the neighbor stressed some of the zoning issues to us today. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but.
Yeah, to clarify, the commission can, at their discretion, make a recommendation if they feel like the variations have a material effect or relationship to historic preservation.
May I ask you to please just very briefly go over the actual architectural plans?
Okay. And I'm not sure if you folks have seen the perspective.
If you could just stay close to the microphone, because they're recording
I
it.
wanted to make sure they
Yeah.
had a copy
Okay,
of some of this
can you
information.
go to that image?
Which image do you need? What page are you on?
Thank you for putting that up.
So just very briefly, just to give us an overview of the parts
Okay.
that we're supposed to be looking at.
I think, pardon me, the best comparison might be if you opened your packet having the floor plans and looked at the first sheet, which is the existing site plan.
What
You'll
page?
immediately see the difference if you compare that to the proposed site plan, which has the new addition.
42, page 42?
There you go. All right, and from the west or rear portion of that plan you're looking at, the addition is at the left, at the rear. There are 2 condensing units that the owner to the north pointed to between that addition and a retaining wall that contains the concrete steps going down to the ADU unit. There are 4 steps and then a turn to the west, 3 more steps, and then access to the lower level unit. The angle and semicircular lines of the terracing drops down to allow the basement current area, which becomes the ADU unit, to have an access to light, ventilation. Those windows are existing, one of which would be changed to an escape window. There would be a light and drainage at that lower point. The drainage going to a system which is exited through a sump pump. You can see there is access from the porch that is existing with steps down to the sidewalk, walking around to the ADU unit, and there's a paving stone walkway directly to the east, shown as circular symbols, going to the east public sidewalk. I think that's the sidewalk the neighbor was referring to as being, or allowing the public to access the north side of this property. During construction, we will be putting a construction fence up to protect anything on the north side of this addition, and thereafter, there will be plantings on the north side of the addition to replicate, if you will, what is currently shrubage on both sides of that north property line. The plan you're looking at is of the first floor of the existing building, and if you see the living room on the right, lower, dining on the left, you'll see a doorway leading to the kitchen area, and those are steps going up to the second level. To the left of that, walking into the kitchen, there's an existing bathroom to be removed, and that's where the steps occur going down to the addition. I should stop there and see if there's any questions from anybody on currently what we've described.
It may be helpful, Mr. Kirsch, just to walk through the elevation drawings
Okay.
at this point.
Why don't you put up the first floor elevation first? I'm sorry, the east side. That's it there. Okay, currently, the porch, which is approximately in the center of the building, has stairs going down to the left. There are stairs going down to the right from the porch. We would keep those, and then you're seeing on that view of the rear portion of that north wall, you're seeing the covering of the stairwell, which is open, a canopy, and then beyond that, it's a covering for the stair going down into the addition, and the last form is the roof element and wall of the addition itself. Please note that in, what shall I say, to some degree respect of the architecture that's there, and coming from our submission to the state of Illinois, the Preservation Commission in Springfield, we decided to depress that addition down into the ground 3 feet to keep the roof lower to begin with. Secondly, and contrary to most of the responses I've got from that commission, we are to duplicate the shingles and the color of and around the addition and the roof structure to match what is existing. That's why you see no distinction, if you will, between what's being shown as the addition and what's existing on the building. There are substantial repairs which the owner has begun but will continue through this process of renovation. They will include the walls as well, exterior walls as well as roof and windows. Once again, questions with where I'm at?
Stuart, did you want him to look at the rendering on page 56? Do we need additional discussion of that?
And what is the dimension from that north face of the addition to that lot line to the north? What is the new dimension there?
It's per the code, the zoning code, which is 5 feet.
It is 5. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
The distance approximately, I don't know because I don't have a survey, but I would say it's almost equal on the north lot to what is existing now. It might be 15 to 17 or more feet. So the position of their south wall could be approximately 20 feet away from this wall. But I'd stand corrected based upon their survey, which I don't have access to, okay? I think their setback on that side is larger because their lot size is larger, and there's a percentage relationship between the side yard requirement and the lot size.
Other questions? Go ahead.
Yes, hi. So looking at the rendering we're looking at right now, towards the main front porch, there's a little shed piece there, and I think I see that in another image. Is that existing?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and it just maybe looks a little bit different because it got colorized as part of the rendering, maybe. Okay.
It is existing.
And the form that is behind it that goes up to the porch roof, that's also existing, and is at the front door next to that? Yes, all that right there. Okay, thank you.
I have a question from the, from the attic. Is that what looks like an emergency stair is that currently there, or is that being
Mr.
added?
Sterling, do you have any shots of the rear of the building? Okay. This is what you're referring to, Mr. Klein, is a existing steel fire or escape that was put on the building. I frankly don't know at what point in time. I would suspect it's at least 20 to 30 years of age. There you go. And it allows an emergency exit from the attic and from the second floor with a ladder access from that point down to grade.
Okay,
And that would remain.
all right. And I had a question about the terracing. Is that all non-permeable or permeable? Or
Permeable.
planning?
Permeable for planting,
Okay,
very definitely. The whole idea there is to give the occupant more than a basement view, if you will, but something that leads up and out to the grade level and gives a greater feeling of having some natural views out their window.
And the retaining wall does not go above grade at all? It's all at grade and then,
They would approximately 6 inches,
okay.
just to be above the grade. So A, you can see them, B, mount a railing on them, or not have the grade wash over them.
Sarah, can you go to sheet 61 of 103, or Kate, not sure who's driving. I have a question about one of the basement windows that peeks up above. Yeah. One of those windows I think was going to be replaced. Can you just describe how that is going to change this view?
Okay. That is a topic.
And what I believe that you see this from the front of the house, correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
you
okay.
would see it very difficultly from the front, but meaning the public sidewalk, but you would definitely see it as you approached, and we're about 15 feet from the house on the entry sidewalk to
Okay.
the porch. Ms. Harper met with the owner to the south. They discussed that topic, And frankly, the result, as we're now suggesting, is to shift the window shown in the basement plan from the one, if you will, on the south to the one on the north, to make sure the terracing would come up and out on Miss Harper's property, not overlap or be in any way over the line of the neighbor to the south. Keep in mind that when these homes were constructed, we're really talking about almost a townhome concept more than 100 years ago. These are not separated individual residences. They have a common demising wall between them.
And then will the new window be recessed like what we're seeing here?
Yes.
And then is it like dug out, or what will we be seeing here with the
Okay,
new window?
To your first point of it being recessed, it is approximately an 8 to 9 inch wall thickness, and that window is set back at minimum probably 4 to 5 inches into that wall space.
Yeah.
What we will have to do to meet the code, the building code in this particular case, is to drop the sill of that existing window, replicate the window of wood, its color being the same that it is now, but making the opening, the exiting opening of that new window 20 inches minimum in width and a height which gives us in excess of 5.7 square feet.
So you're
And
down.
it has to be no more than 3 feet above the finished floor in the basement. So that's the criteria we have to accept in, shall we say, putting in a new window in the existing space. We have the width, we don't have the proper height. Therefore, the reason for the terracing down. And again, that one would be drained as well to a sump pump system.
Got it.
And the security light, if you will.
Thank
There is
you.
a sidewalk that goes southward from the entry walk off the public sidewalk on the east. And then there is a jog, if you will, in that sidewalk to come closer to the neighbor on the south's entry porch staircase. We want to do our recess and terracing of that lower level in the window between the current not only grade level, but also the sidewalk and the home.
So, a few questions. Hi. So the addition form that pokes up the highest, the little tower, that's for headroom for the stairs to get down into the office space? Yes. Okay.
That's correct.
And the truncated hip roof next to it, has that always been at that lower level to accommodate the windows from the kitchen looking out?
No, there is no roof or extension there. That is the addition in and of itself, which connects to what is now a flat north wall.
Right, but are you not completing that hip roof structure to its peak in order to preserve the views from the kitchen windows?
2 reasons. Yes to the suggestion you just made, but also to work with the same pitches that the architecture currently has.
Okay.
And blend in with that as close as we can to what was original.
You mentioned that it got a little lower as a result of working with the state, is that right?
It was actually lowered by my firm going to the state because we frankly have made presentations of this nature many times in the past, and we know the silhouette is an issue. And that issue is, as you get closer to the front of the home, more of an issue. So we wanted to depress that and make it as quiet, if you will, as possible. I think that perspective, if you could bring that back a moment. The illustrator tried to put some shrubbery in front on the north side of the north wall of the addition, but we decided to take it away so you could see the addition. But yes, we would have more shrub in the front of that, or north side of the addition.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to hear what the commissioners thought about just overall, like the look and shape of that. I know it's towards the back, but it is on the side. I think it's a bit unusual. I've never seen an addition quite like that, with sunken like that. But so I just wanted to get people's opinions on, what they're thinking when they see that.
So I personally think you had a very flat, simple geometry of that facade, and now you've got 3 different volumes being stuck on there, and I think it looks cluttered. I think that it could be more refined to be 1 volume and less piecey.
Anyone else?
Yeah, I mean, the front of the house and the entry porch are bumps and things that are additive to the house, but they're at a much different scale from what you're doing. I think that probably the decision to retain the kitchen windows and flatten the top of the hip over the main part of the office is a good one. But as was just pointed out, you've got all these different, almost disparate pieces. And while they're trying to work within the vocabulary of the house and its roof pitches and its materials, and even the front porch and the shingled piers that hold up the front porch, I think the way those things come together at different heights is visually problematical and is what's making the appearance of it seem almost a jumble. And looking at the plan, I'm wondering, you've taken out a bathroom to create the aisle alongside the kitchen peninsula, and you go almost to the exterior wall before you start going down, and then this little bump that John was talking about with a miniature hip roof on it is headroom for the stair. I wonder if you header just a little bit more of the framing, if the stair down could start at the basically the south edge of that peninsula. You would still have the same visual dimension for the kitchen, but you probably could get down enough to sort of clear the framing for your new ceiling in the office space. And just basically eliminate that, or at least subsume it into the hip roof that you've already got there. And I would think that if you went down a couple of more steps outboard of the covered porch for the lower apartment entry, that maybe you could carry the eave line of the main office around and make it the eave line of the covering for the steps down as well. Those seem like they would be simple fixes which would address a lot of the concerns that I'm hearing about the 3 additions where everyone is kind of thinks it would be nice to have one that with a roof that turns into a covered porch.
The suggestion you've made has another component, and that is, as you bring that stair going down into the addition, you delete the ability of using that countertop area, which is recessed, if you look at the proposed first floor plan.
From both sides, you mean?
Yes, sir. And
Yeah, but if you made it into a breakfast bar, it would mean that nobody could sit there every time somebody wanted to go up and down the stair because it's only looks to be about 3 feet wide.
The bar is less than 3 feet wide. It's the aisleway that is 3 foot wide.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
And
That's, well,
There would be stools in that area, except that we recessed or made the bar top less in width. But let me go back to your suggestion. I just wanted you to be aware of there's another component to making that decision, namely the seating at that bar top. But as far as deleting that, if you will, third cube or extension, that may be possible. Certainly, you can delete it if the seating is given up on the counter. Whether the height of the, if I understood you correctly, Mr. Cohn, of the covering over the entry to the ADU unit would suffice, I'm not sure. I'd have to cut a section there. But I don't believe that the roof of the addition could consume both of them. And I wouldn't want it to, because that elongates the shape, if you will, of the addition. I'd have to cut it back closer to the wall to just have it form and be used as a canopy over the stair to the ADU unit. I wouldn't want to extend that addition roof in its size
if you
further
wanted
to
to
the
give up the
east.
seating, that you could get enough steps down to actually fit under the roof
Which roof?
at that point. The roof on the main office.
Can I,
I'm just trying to suggest a way that you might sort of simplify all of this, but obviously you're designing it, so.
I have a question for commissioners, which is whether the PC quality of this violates, you believe, the standards that we are reviewing this for? Or if it meets the standards as it is?
I do.
You do?
I do.
You think that it's not meeting the standards in its
I'm
current
not
form?
fully
through the
convinced
standard.
on height being visually compatible with properties, structure, sites, public ways, objects. We haven't seen anything of this particular addition in the context with surrounding buildings so that we can discuss, again, that height across the context, and some of these others like rhythm of entrance porches and.
Chair, can I just ask a clarification question before we, is at the beginning, I thought you said that that was not an entrance to the ADU, that the ADU is entered in the interior?
No, no, the ADU unit is entered from the depressed concrete stairs
Okay,
that are accessed from the exterior. The office addition
oh, the office addition is entered from,
from the interior, and that's where Mr. Cohn's suggestion is coming from, to move that stair southward to gain the headroom, if you will, to
Okay.
eliminate that element which is raised to allow headroom to occur.
okay, I was misunderstanding the office versus the ADU. Thank you for the clarification.
It's okay.
I was going to ask her about that. So Commissioner Morris, I just wanted to, or I'm sorry, were you done, Commissioner Sullivan? So I was going to ask you about the standards in particular that you were referring to, the construction standards, number one? Is that, okay. Was there anything in the alteration standards that we might want to take a look at, since this is an alteration also? So Mr. Kirsch, do you have the yellow, the construction, the review, standards for review of construction?
No, I was going to ask Commissioner Morris to elaborate on what she's referring to for the construction standards.
Right, so there's standards for review of construction, and then there's standards for review of alteration. And the standards for review of construction, she was referring specifically to number one, although you mentioned rhythm of openings.
I just mentioned that because I don't feel like it's been addressed. I mean, we haven't gone step by step through the standards and seen in the presentation how this meets them.
Right.
I
And
think
then
that
were there,
Number 6, I think, was rhythm of entrance porches.
and thank you, rhythm of entrance courses, I knew that there. So standards for review of construction, numbers 1 and 6 have come up. And also, I'm sorry, then I was asking about standards for review of alteration, if there was anything in particular you wanted him to address.
I think Commissioner Cohen's comments, that have we investigated every possible option to make this a more simplistic, less intrusive, 3 sort of addition process, kind of speaks to number 1 as far as the minimal alteration of the property.
So that's number 1, standards for review of alteration.
Alteration, yeah.
Number 1, every reasonable effort shall be made to adapt the property, structure, site, or object in a manner that requires minimal alteration of the property, structure, site, or object in its environment.
On the standards, I think 8 and 10 would apply as well, roof shapes, and then scale of structure.
So that would be so now we're back to the construction ones.
Yeah.
Number 8, roof shapes and roof-mounted equipment. Roof shape of a structure, including a roof-mounted equipment, shall be visually compatible with the structures to which it is visually related. So that's definitely one that we've been talking about. And you said 10 as well?
Yeah,
Scale of the structure. The size and mass of structures in relation to open spaces, windows, doors, door openings, porches, and balconies shall be visually compatible with the property, structure, sites, public ways, objects, and places to which they are visually related.
So that would be the covered, the porch covering for the steps down to the unit in the basement, and then the roof and the enclosure for the stair.
So just to review, standards for construction 1, 6, 8, and 10 is what I heard, and review of alterations, standard number 1, reasonable effort. John?
And can we say that these areas that we don't feel they meet the standards are all relating to the massings, the groupings, and the roof shapes on the back? Okay.
You mean
Yeah.
on the side?
Yes.
On the side,
Well,
yeah.
yes.
The north side.
The north side,
What we're
yes.
looking at on page 56.
Yes.
this,
Yeah.
on the-
And what number and group is that?
That would be standards for review of alteration number 1, standards for review of construction 1, 6, 8, and 10.
Okay.
Go ahead. You look like you want to say
I just have a
something.
question, because, I mean, what was this, 5 standards that we've now cited? And, I mean, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but, on this white piece of paper for asking for the zoning, and, I mean, we've delineated 5 standards that we need further, information on. And so I was just wondering, how does that relate to these questions for the zoning?
I think typically I would maybe defer to you to ask if you think some of the changes that you might make would change the zoning summary, basically change the variations that you're requesting. I think that they might, but they might decrease the degree that some of those are being requested.
If I understand your question, would the comments, if changed, change any of the zoning request? Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And I guess what I'm getting at to answer your question, Commissioner Klein, is that if they do, then this should not proceed to the Land Use Commission until those changes are proposed and finalized so that it can be properly noticed for that commission, and the
Yeah.
exact variations and degree of those variations that he's requesting are
Right, well,
identified.
it's just because we're up to 5 standards that we've listed, and I don't feel comfortable sending this to land use without at least having a continuation and getting more information to address those standards, because I don't think that we would be able to do that tonight, but.
Well, in terms of zoning variation, are you asking for anything other than a side yard and rear yard setback?
I think the one that might be reduced, but possibly not, because I think that the footprint might remain the same as
Yeah.
the request for lot coverage. But I think if it were to be changed, it would be a reduction in the request and not an increase. And because if you see the stairway that we're talking about, that kind of third mass as it relates, that's just atop the same footprint as the office addition, correct? So that would not change the lot coverage request, nor would that change the request for setbacks.
I would agree.
So in that instance, it could
Yeah,
proceed.
so it could proceed, I think, yeah.
How common is that for it to go forward to the Land Use Commission without?
If that's what you wanted to do, I think that we should discuss the variations that are requested, and if you would like to make a recommendation or not. If the commission decides that they don't think that the variations requested are really material to their purview under the request for certificate of appropriateness, then I think you could basically defer this application to the Land Use Commission without a recommendation and have them review it under their standards.
And then they wouldn't necessarily have any problem going forward with that. I don't want the applicant to have problems because we took a step.
It's always a little bit of a chicken and egg, because you could approve the certificate of appropriateness and send it to the Land Use Commission, and they might, approve it with conditions that reduce or change what the appearance looks like, and it would come back. So there's always that possibility, but I think that it's not uncommon. I think in this instance, these things are somewhat disconnected. For example, they could get approval by the Land Use Commission to construct something like this, but the actual physical appearance of that is, you are still the determining body for that.
Kate, are you saying that, excuse me, it could go forward with zoning without a certificate of appropriateness from us?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it could be continued. The way that this is somewhat aligning is that it would actually, if it was continued, you would come back here the second week of July. This case is tentatively scheduled to go to the Land Use Commission. I think it would be the day after the Preservation Commission meeting. I can double check
Which means
that.
they have to get on the agenda between now and the next.
And it has been noticed for the Land Use Commission. The newspaper notice has been, the legal notice has been sent in. It is scheduled for the 12th of July for review by the Land Use Commission. And the Preservation Commission meeting would be on the 11th of July.
Has that happened before? I'm just, Kate, has that happened where it's not gotten a COA and it's moved forward to zoning? I'm just wondering, how, as a commissioner, how they make a decision without actually seeing what they're voting on. I mean, they'll have a sense, I suppose, but they won't really know what it's supposed to look like. It just seems strange to me that you would vote on something without knowing what it's going to look like.
I can't think of an instance, at least in recent memory, where something like that has happened. It's not entirely typical for major variations to come before this body. I think it happens 1 or 2 times a year. I think some of it, I think that you could defer to the applicant and what he would like to do. I don't see anything in the code that stipulates that it can't move forward to the Land Use Commission. If you request, they might decide to continue it at the Land Use Commission to wait for this commission's determination.
Zoning ordinances typically don't impact or have anything that governs what something looks like, except very indirectly by limiting height, for instance, or limiting coverage.
May I make a suggestion? And first, a clarification, if I might, from Mr. Sterling. Were you suggesting or implying, I'm not sure, to come back here on the 11th and then go to land use on the 12th or 13th?
What I'm hearing from this body is that they have requested changes it sounds like they're leaning towards continuing this case to allow you the opportunity to make some of these changes so that some of these standards are addressed. The way that this case is currently scheduled, if that continuance happened, would be that you would go to the Preservation Commission in the following day, you would have your Land Use Commission hearing. That's all I was saying. You could request that Land Use Commission hearing get pushed off or not. I don't see anything that says that we have to wait for this commission to make a decision prior to it going to the Land Use Commission.
For what it's worth to the commission, I would prefer we came back here on the 11th, got a decision, and then went the next day to the Land Use Commission. I don't want to move forward from this point and then have to go backwards for whatever set of reasons appearing before the Land Use Commission. So I think that is the logical step to take.
I think that makes sense too. I'm also managing this case throughout, so whatever happens on the 11th, I can relay to the Land Use Commission the following day.
May I just ask my client her opinion, please, before I proceed? Yes, that's agreed upon.
So just to be clear, Mr. Kirsch, it's relatively unusual for us to have questions about 5 standards. So that's why we were suggesting a continuance on this case. But you would like us to consider the land use, the variance question recommendation, I guess I should say, right?
I thought he was saying he wants to clear it through us first and then talk zoning after he comes back with a second iteration of this. That was my understanding. Is that?
Correct.
Yeah.
You would like to stay on the agenda for the 12th?
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would like to make sure we're on the same page before I go to land use. Okay?
Okay.
I just wanted to say, I think that also might be an opportunity to maybe satisfy the neighbors. I'm not suggesting you have to, but have a conversation potentially, or whatever changes might be more amenable as well, and then you might not have neighbors come to zoning potentially.
Okay.
I think that my recommendation would be for the next presentation to address each of the standards specifically. That might help us to kind of sort through the issues here.
If I could have a copy of those both, I would appreciate it.
I'll send you a list of the findings and the discussion in the 5 standards that were identified, and we can always follow up and have a conversation together or meet in person or something to review.
I would like to do that after we've made the effort to consider the changes.
Okay.
Okay?
So,
Thank you.
before we move on to christening a continuation, I just have a couple other comments that I want to make. The number of volumes is one issue that I think we're addressing with the standards. I'm not convinced that the truncated hip roof is appropriate on this house that has the kind of very classic pure geometry of the shingle style. Sometimes we see that kind of a form when there's a porch over it or something else going on, or railing or something like that on its own, especially when it doesn't have its little sister buildings there. I'm concerned about the bluntness of it. So, and one of the reasons why I mention that is that it might end up relating to something that might affect zoning. If you end up pushing the addition a little closer to the house, maybe it could come up a little bit, maybe you can fix the roof planes into a more uniform solution, kind of when all of those things happen. And maybe that creates a new submission that would be less demanding on the zoning variance.
John, in all fairness, while I agree with you about the truncated quality of the roof, I understand it as a way to preserve 2 existing historic windows in the side elevation of the house. The comment that I wanted to make is that while we could make, if you're willing to come back on the 12th when we re-review this, we could make a recommendation, on the 11th, we could make a recommendation to zoning if you wanted us to, but frankly, I see what we do and the determination that zoning will make as entirely unrelated and very different. The issues that we're addressing have nothing to do with what zoning will look at, which is that this is an existing non-conforming house which is already rather dramatically overbuilt for the size of the house. So what they have to determine is whether or not they feel okay authorizing more construction on this site and more ground coverage. And frankly, you know, if I were to vote now, I would vote not. I would vote to abstain from making a recommendation to zoning one way or the other.
So my understanding is that that's what we've decided to do for tonight, correct?
And just to clarify for the commission, because it's relatively confusing, I think, how to provide recommendations to the Land Use Commission. And so I've asked for a decent amount of guidance on it. So it's not that all three of these standards in front of you have to be met. It's either the first one is met. So either it's necessary and appropriate in the interest of historic preservation. I can give you an example would be recreation of an original feature that was lost that now is not allowed under the zoning. Or the other two have to be met, and these are specifically related to economic hardship, and not economic hardship in the sense of economic burden, but in the lens of a taking, that in the instance that preservation devalues a property or does not allow it to reach its development potential, that you are authorizing or recommending that major variations can offset that balance, and that offset is not detrimental to the public health and general welfare. So these are it is somewhat convoluted. I would say in most instances that it comes in front of you, it doesn't relate to the interest of historic preservation. There was one maybe 6 months ago or something where someone came to recreate an original front porch, and it was a front yard setback. And I think that's kind of a rare instance where it was, yes, this does meet the standards, but it's just my own clarification for the commission.
Mr. Sterling, could you please tell me if you have a photograph that shows the full building? Well, there was one prior to that of the existing that shows more of the north segment. There you go.
What page are you on?
I
59?
want to address your comment, okay? I don't agree with you. I think that the nature of this house, and frankly part of the beauty of the architect's original design of it, is that the massing does have several elements that are added to and part of the structure. That was the effort here, and we'll be happy to look at your concern, Commissioner Morris, on the point of the number of them, but I don't concur that it's not part of the building's design. And please, if you have any other comments that you want us to address, let me know them. And if not, I'll be happy to be back here on the 11th.
I can make a motion.
Okay, does anyone have a motion?
I'll make a motion to continue 23 Pres 0098 until the next meeting, July 11th, specifically to address standards for construction 1, 6, 8, and 10, and for alteration standard number 1.
Okay, do I have a second? Okay, see a second. All in favor? Aye. All opposed? Abstain? Okay, motion carries.
Thanks for your time.
Okay, we are going to return now to new business number A, 2125 Sherman Avenue, Northeast Historic District, 23 Pres 0096. The applicant is here. Okay, staff, could staff please read this into the record?
Jeannie Petrick, architect and applicant, submits for a certificate of appropriateness to construct an open front porch at the home's west street-facing elevation, remove a wood exterior deck stair at the north elevation's rear volume and infill with in-kind framing posts and railing, install a bracketed overhang over the rear entryway, replace 1/1 wood double-hung windows in kind with custom milled Akoya wood windows, and replace wood shingles in the north and south gable ends with Akoya wood shingles. When you're ready.
Hi, my name's Jeannie Petrick, and my clients hired me to add a porch to the front of their house, which we believe was there many years ago. And it happened, if you see the photos, am I in control or are you in control? Okay. You can see the front stoop is deteriorated, or if you drove by, it's an existing concrete stoop with some stone clad, and the stone you can see is falling apart. So that was kind of what instigated this project. And then to the south and to the north of them, and then all along the street, there are many front porches as you go along. And then Cade was nice enough to provide the old map that shows, I don't know, did you include that in this? Which shows that there was originally what we thought a front porch.
The tiniest page.
If we can, yeah.
What page is that one? 16.
So if you, you can see that all these houses line up and the front porches align. And so that was our goal, to bring that back and with the same proportions and similar proportions as the neighboring houses. And currently also they have vinyl siding, which we would like to bring back to wood. My client had found this product that was really interesting, and I think it's a Scandinavian process of treating wood that is, so it's a treated wood, so it's wood, and it's actually a green process, and I'll pass the samples around. But we'd be proposing to replace the vinyl siding with this wood siding, as well as the Marvin actually will also use this wood for the wood windows that they want to replace. All the windows are double hung, or well, some of them might be casement, but none of them have mullions in them or any intricate architectural detail. And if you can also notice where that chimney is, this is the north elevation. If you can see the edge of the old house, that whole addition, I don't know when that was done. I would guess maybe in the 90s or 80s. But from that edge to the east is all brand new addition. So you can see the front proposed porch in this elevation at one side, and then the back you can see the proposed covered entry just to the back door. Currently it has one back door and two double hung, and because we wanted to extend, we thought architecturally it looked smarter to extend the whole covered porch. Yeah, Kate, on the back of the house. Yeah, number 3, drawing number 3. So we're extending, the bay sits out, so the covered entry terminates into the bay on one side, and then it will be bracketed with an architectural bracket on the other. And this is simply just for a covered entry into their back. We're also replacing, because of that, we thought it would look better with 3 fixed, 2 of them will be fixed doors, and then 1 will be active door into their back family room. And then on the front of the house, you can see, the existing, really, these houses are so vertical, and so that porch really also just helps with the proportions of the house. And so one of the things with the entry and the covered porch, we kept the pediment detail that was over that, not in style exactly, but just the pitch, so that it was the focal point of an entry, and then everything else would shed back to the house. But also if you look at the existing house, it's very vertical, even if you're right in front of it, just because all the materials go all the way up. And if you notice down the street, you'll see that all these houses that are pretty narrow and very vertical, just to articulate them and break up the spaces, they used shingles on the under the roof line of the 3rd floor, both in the side dormers and in the front. And I shared some photos, but it was probably a lot of them to look at. But anyway, so that's why we wanted to introduce the shingles on the face of the front of the north, and then also to the side dormers and the back dormers. And we just thought that would also help to kind of bring it back to its historical intentions that were probably there before the vinyl siding. Just so you know, that is a hatch. It's not the actual style of the shingles that we're proposing is a straight edge shingle. So it's pretty straightforward, not too detailed, but also not too rustic. And the columns and the railings, these would all be wood, very similar in proportions and styles to the ones that are up and down the street. Anybody have any questions?
You finished? Okay.
Sorry.
Questions for the applicant?
Yeah, I have a question. Do you know if those shingles are still there in the gable behind the siding?
We haven't investigated, so I have no idea. They could be.
Yeah, and I'm wondering because then what shape they might be, because just in looking at the neighbors' photos, there's so many different shapes.
Yeah, some of them are scalloped, I noticed, and even like
Yeah.
a straight with like I don't know what you call it, like a
Little
clipped
dog-eared or what? Yeah.
chamfered corner or something.
Yeah.
I mean, I would be, if there was something beneath it that we wanted to match, that's what I would, that's not what I'm proposing. I would definitely recommend that to them. So,
Yeah, just haven't been able to get
yeah.
back
And
there.
also with the siding proportions, like I'm assuming it's the same siding as they have right now, but we haven't investigated that. And that would definitely be my recommendation too, that we would bring it back to the existing proportions, original intent.
And like same idea for the corner detail. Whether
Yeah,
it's cut-
if there was a corner detail, which, I would, I have no, I didn't look enough at the other houses to see what theirs were, but, if it was more of a mitered corner or the corner caps.
Real quick, it looks like they have the caps, but yeah, so I get your
Oh,
point.
the other
though.
houses?
It looks like it, yeah. But I understand your response, though. but
Yeah.
yeah.
We would
We'll
like
see
to
what's
match,
there.
but obviously now it's kind of all hidden under the vinyl siding, so.
I have a question about that for Kate, actually, for staff. If we approve the project as she has presented it, and then they remove the siding and they discover something else under there, do they have to come back, or can we give administrative approval if they have to change it? I mean, what's the process?
I guess typically that's a change that we would review. I can't imagine that like the exposure would be so drastically different that it wouldn't be a minor modification that we could we could adjust. Or are you referring to like trying to restore the original
I would,
siding?
any
which could
of
be very
those,
difficult.
I would like to give the applicant as much flexibility in this. I mean, personally, others can disagree, but if they're trying to actually do something positive to bring back what it might have looked like before, and it's not what we've approved, I don't want them to feel obligated to do what we approved.
Yeah,
If there's an, yes, thank
I
you.
mean,
If there's an
typically if-
opportunity to
Could
do
we
something.
state that in the
Yes, you
closing?
could, the commissioners could. Also, I mean, if you were to remove it and it has the original siding qualities and you're replicating those in kind, that's something that would fall under an administrative approval
Okay.
already. So I'd be very comfortable approving that.
All right, so it wouldn't be a problem.
Okay.
So you understood my question.
Yeah,
They're not,
yeah. And definitely, I mean, I would be in agreement with you that, you know, that we would want to match what's in kind underneath, not necessarily what's the exterior, current exterior.
Or what you've come here to ask us for. So the
Right.
process of getting approval for that is not going to be burdensome, is what I'm trying to get to. Okay. Commissioner Jacobs?
Yes,
So you
thank
had a
you.
question?
So, who's going to make the Akoya windows?
Marvin?
Okay,
So
Signature
the
Ultimate.
Koya is actually the wood product, treated wood, and then Marvin would use their profiles, et cetera. They would produce it.
Okay, and an all wood window?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. I
And
don't know if the interior would be the Koya,
Koya,
but the
okay.
exterior would. The point is they want like something that's durable, but also wood.
Okay, and I know we don't discuss colors, but I would like to know if they're painted or stained. Can I ask that? I think it relates to texture and grain
Yeah,
and
yeah.
not so much color.
So those samples, those are actually two different finishes. They aren't the one, so it would be more opaque and look more like paint, but it would already be.
So, all right, sort of an
Processed.
opaque stain. kind
Yeah,
of a
it
look,
wouldn't be,
okay.
yeah, it would be an opaque stain.
And is the siding being treated the same exact way? So sort of a
Yes.
monotone
Yes,
solution?
yes, yes.
Okay. And the columns on the porch, they look
Good
like
point.
of a Doric order? Is that what we're
Yeah,
going for?
yeah.
Okay.
I don't think those would be, I would have to verify that. I would actually, I haven't confirmed that those could be made with a Koya, but they definitely can be made durable, like either with a the poly resin process or with wood.
Okay. I was just more
Whatever.
concerned about the aesthetics of them, but.
Yeah.
And do we have any details through the guard rail system?
Nothing past this. So they're 3 feet high, 3 inches on center, and it would just be a square.
1 inch
post.
square balusters?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to clarify, because I was going to ask something similar. The columns on here, the profile that we see is actually reflective of what you intend to do?
Yes.
It's not just the equivalent of a hatch?
No.
It's- Or, yeah.
Yes, correct.
Wait, you're talking about the column capitals, because they're not any of the orders that that I recognize. I'm
Well,
that.
it's my version of a Tuscan.
Well, I mean, if it's a purchased item, it'll be
Yeah, it's-
classically correct, so.
Exactly.
I'm not worried about it, but it does go to something that John was asking about, which is that, the drawing that you brought to us, I think is very nice and would be a very positive improvement of this house, but it is clearly dependent on a lot of details that we're taking on faith, and raises some questions. I mean, I'm looking at the front door, which is a 6-panel door in the original, and I went to the photograph, and it seems like an old door that was stripped. Do you know whether it's an original door, or did you think about using it? And then in your proposed, the new front door, is it just a 2-panel solid door? And I mean, where did stuff like that come from?
That is a typo. We did not talk about the door. We're not changing the door.
Oh, okay.
So my fault.
And the existing windows, do we know if they're original to the house?
I know that some of them have been replaced but I do not know if all of them have been replaced.
Okay, and in particular, I think we're
The
probably.
front one with the
Yes,
leaded.
exactly.
That would, the frame would remain, or the leaded glass we'd want to, it's intended just to remain. So we
Okay.
would,
Built into a new frame or something like that?
Yes, yes.
Okay, okay.
And the roof is metal, is that what that is?
yeah, for the new proposed, both the front and the back.
Sorry, I'm just looking at this more closely. Is there going to be like dental molding right under the, is that what the drawing shows in those little vertical lines above the,
Seems to be,
yeah,
yeah.
Yes.
okay.
And, I mean, again, there are lots of lines shown in the pediment, pedimented section of roof sitting over the columns, and I have no idea what they are. I mean, I hope they're profiled and that that the setback for each of those layers is something that looks like it would plausibly go with the house. The other thing that's interesting is that if you look at the photographs, the decorative gable that's over the door looks like something that people were buying at lumber yards for a long time. And it is set so that it basically is on the flat face of the bay, but when you extend the gable, it actually is going to lap around the side of the bay, which is not shown in your drawing. So the whole question of how that's done in standing seam, and then, what happens where the fascia, and I assume some sort of gutter, turns the corner and then goes back. Does it get, it will have to be clipped off at an angle, and that's something that,
I'm sorry, I'm not following you. Are you talking about the north side?
yeah.
Right there?
Yeah. That roof is going to it's going to continue past
Actually,
and
it's
come
not
to the
because.
center of the bay based on the front elevation drawing. So that's a kind of interesting detail, because the roof will come down at an angle and you'll have
Oh, I see what you're saying,
flashing,
just
and
slightly
then the
taper
fascia
back.
will get cut off at an angle, as will a gutter. So, I mean, your drawing looks wonderful, and, short of seeing and understanding that you're going to detail this and be on top of all of that little stuff, we're sort of taking it on faith.
One more question about the siding.
That would taper back.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I probably cut you off.
Jeannie, is the
sorry.
is the siding, that you have one note, I think, on the front elevation that indicates that it's shingles everywhere, but it's going to be a new linear siding on the main body of the house, only the shingles and up in the gables, right?
Yes.
Okay. And is that a beveled shaped siding, or is it flush? Is there a reveal?
Oh, it's a beveled,
Okay.
yeah. I
Traditional.
was proposing it once again based on what's there now, but like we said, we don't know if that
Okay.
was the original.
Okay. I've never seen that in a Akoya. It's interesting, but I think of that material as something used on more modern houses right now, but I don't
Right.
see why it couldn't be used in a traditional home in a beveled shape.
The lumberyard would be cutting it, so.
Can I would like to just return to what we were talking about a second ago with the pediment and so on page 13, I'm looking at front west elevation existing and front west elevation proposed next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so if you just put, Kate, if you want to just zoom out a tiny bit, and then, yeah. So the pediment is quite a bit wider than the one that's there now? So
Correct.
can you explain again how it is that the roof line is going to intersect with the part of the elevation that's heading backwards?
I think there's a framing plan or a roof
Okay.
plan on that. I don't know where that would be.
It's on page before.
So if you actually zoom into number 3, it's just the framing plan, but, I'm sorry, Kate, keep on going. You're up there, 3. If you see the footprint of the existing house with and then you'll see the 2 columns. This is the roof plan. And so that roof would be extending past the columns, and then you see the back edge that comes into the side of the house,
Got
if
it.
that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So that's the reason why the pediment extends beyond.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I mean, it's not the exact proportions of that original one because it's a roof.
No, yeah,
Yeah.
no, I just was, this exact detail is what I was asking
Right,
about.
right, and the elevation, I should have caught that, so.
So then the other question that I had, there's a large tree,
Yes.
so is that going to make room for this?
We hope it is not. The plan is, we want to see if we can save it and keep that structural post, or we're going to look into possibly creating kind of a cantilever, like a triangular cantilever on the decking and the roof line, so that it's all kind of hidden behind that one of those intermittent posts, and then it would triangulate back to the house so that we'd be able to keep the column and the tree.
How far is the tree from the edge of your proposed deck?
It's very close. It's probably about 4 feet in both directions.
And what is the species of the tree?
I am not sure. I would suspect it's a Dutch elm.
Okay. You have
It's
a
a large trunk.
Okay, you have a framing plan for the roof. You don't have a framing plan that shows the foundation for the deck. And
I do.
one of the things that you can do is if you put the deck, the posts that hold up the beam on sonotube columns, is you can gingerly excavate, and if you hit a roof, then you move the sonotube foundation over, because if you size the beam that's holding up the edge of the deck sufficiently, you should be able to do that. That'll work with some species of trees. You don't sever very many roots or any significant roots by gerrymandering.
Yeah.
Obviously in a straight line, but by gerrymandering the sonotube footings, you're fine. If it's an oak tree, forget it. It's dead the minute you start excavating next to it.
Let's hope not.
And if you're really genuinely concerned about the tree, I would get an arborist out, and I would maybe even pay the arborist to be there when they're digging, for your footings.
My main question had to do with the depth of the porch and whether it was going to require the tree to go away.
No, we're hoping
because-
to save it. I mean, that is our full intention. So I appreciate your ideas towards how to do that. And then the goal would still, obviously, it wouldn't affect the visuals
Right.
at all.
Right.
It would all be underground.
Other questions or comments? I didn't ask if anyone was here to speak from the public, but I don't see anyone.
I am prepared to make a motion, but first I have a question. So, and I am going to move that we issue certificate of appropriateness, but in relation to some of the additional data that we would like to see, can I make that contingent upon our excellent city staff review, and including if there's any question about something meeting the standards, can commissioners then be brought in after the fact for a review of that?
That's what I was just going to recommend,
Okay,
John.
thank
Great
you.
idea.
Okay.
So wait, so how does that go, or how does that?
So you would, and you'll have to submit some of these details anyway as you go in for permit, but we'll review some of these details. I mean, I think one might be a section through the front porch and understanding how it wraps around and some of the details of the railing system and those things.
Pediment.
And the pediment.
And the column.
And as I,
Whatever you've
I
chosen.
think what
That's
they're
what we
saying is
just
that
selected.
they're comfortable with me reviewing that, but often what I'll do is I'll reach out to a commissioner or two and circulate those drawings as well to get their feedback and make sure that they're comfortable with those details of what's proposed.
Sure.
And if there were any feedback that required a change, it does not mean she has to come back here? Okay. All right. Okay.
Any other questions for the applicant before we have a motion? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I move that we issue a certificate of appropriateness for 2125 Sherman Avenue, Northeast Historic District, case 23 Pres 0096, to construct an open front porch at the home's west street-facing elevation, remove a wood exterior deck stair at the north elevation's rear volume, and infill with in-kind framing, posts, and railing, install a bracketed overhang over the rear entryway, replace all 1/1 wood double-hung windows in kind with custom milled Akoya wood windows, and replace wood shingles in the north and south gable ends with Akoya wood shingles to match existing, contingent upon staff approval, and if there are any questions relating to this approval, that commissioner opinion be brought into the discussion.
Applicable standard?
Second.
Okay, it's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Anyone abstain? Okay, motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on to approval of the minutes of May 9th, 2023. Did anyone have any comments on the meeting minutes? Carl, did you have any comments?
No, I was just ready to make a motion
Oh, okay.
if there weren't any comments or revisions.
Did anyone have anything to comment on for the meeting minutes for May? Okay, motion.
Make a motion to approve the minutes with, as presented with no revisions.
Is there a second? Second. Okay, it's been seconded. All opposed? All in favor? Say aye. All opposed? Any abstentions? We have several abstentions. Do you need to keep track of those? Keep your hands up. Oh. Okay. Moving on to staff reports. The first item on the agenda is Legacy Business Program. Staff will provide an update on and next steps for the Legacy Business Program's branding and website development. What page are you on?
I am on page, that is very small type, but
Yes,
I think
it
it
is.
says 83,
83.
88 perhaps. There's a lot of possibilities.
Looks like 83.
Carl, do you want me to pass this off to you, or would you like me to?
Can quickly. So as you may be aware, there's a working group for the Legacy Business Program, which is now officially called the Evanston Legacy Business Alliance. And so we have finalized a logo with the graphic design firm. he's pulling it up right now. So it's slightly different than what, the colors are different, but mostly what you see up there is what was approved. Talmadge Light and the font have, the Talmadge Light, I think, is the navy blue now, and the font is just a more slender font. But other than that, that's the font, the logo that that everyone has agreed to. It was sent out to the 32. I think they're
32
32
pilot candidates, yeah.
pilot businesses for comment, and we've heard back from a few that they appreciate the design. And next steps is to move forward with a website, and the website would then house information on all of the legacy businesses, and give a brief history of why they're significant to the city and what contributions they've added to the city. And some of them are in architecturally significant buildings also. So I guess that could be noted as well. Is there anything else?
How many years to qualify?
Oh, yes. The qualifications, I think, are 20 years, and just to prove that you've had a significant contribution to the culture or ongoing, Evanston.
Yeah, there's a number of qualifications. The major one is the 20-year threshold, and then basically that they're able to demonstrate some kind of social, cultural, economic, political contribution to the city. And that's kind of at that the burden is on them to demonstrate that. I think most have been very willing to do that. They're very excited to kind of share their story and their history and their contribution to the city. And I think that that's partially what the website will just be, a repository of those stories and that history. One of the really interesting things, one of the cooler things I think, is the city has a videographer that's working with the Economic Development Division, and they're collecting some stories and making some videos of some of these pilot candidates that will also be on the website, that just kind of captures not only their origin story, but how many, a lot of these have been in multiple locations and been forced to relocate many times. And it's been an enlightening experience for me to understand how arduous it is for a small business to stay viable for 20 years, and some of these to stay viable for long beyond that, 100 years in some instances.
And some, in particular, one of the businesses is actually interested in developing a mentorship program for businesses that are just starting out or are in their baby years, compared to these more established businesses, to help them, like best practices and just someone to reach out to that's been around and has navigated being in Evanston for a while. So.
Yeah, and also, Carl, you did touch on it, but I think it is important that a lot of these legacy businesses are many are in historic buildings, many are in buildings that have historic significance that may not be registered as landmarks. But the common thread is that they are older, smaller, more adaptable retail spaces that really create the opportunity for these businesses, I think, to be resilient. And that's something that it really takes, a lower rent structure and a willing landlord in a lot of instances to remain part of this community.
I just had a question on the website. Is that going to be on like the City of Evanston's homepage, or how do people find that legacy business website that you guys are creating?
I don't recall the conversation, because some of the like web developer language that was being used by the consultant was way over my head. But I believe that it will be accessed through a very common, like accessible on the city webpage, and the URL will be like cityoфevanston.org / legacy business or something, but that the website itself is actually housed on a separate server. It's not part of the so that it will take you to a separate location.
And then I think the logo is pretty cool. But where will we see it? Like besides the website, is there going to be like merch, so to speak, as my kids say, for this? Or?
So I think included in the packet were some examples, like on a tote bag or on a blade sign,
cool.
or
Yeah.
and even on like promotion, just the like the shape of the logo could be like highlighting someone or something, a product that they sell. So, like a Benison's donut or, Manassian's rug or whatever, just.
Yeah, they did talk about a lot of different applications and mediums, so medallions or plaques, window stickers, flags, blade signs, and a lot of that. I thought initially that there'd be some kind of common thread on what these businesses would want. It was very divergent. They wanted, some were, I don't own the building, so I don't want a medallion or I don't want like a blade sign. I just like want a window sticker or something that. And others were like, yeah, I want the plaque, I want a medallion, something really permanent, and others want more signage.
So
making
the
it
city,
adaptable.
has that logo and the city produces it rather than like, it's not like up to the business to take that logo and do what they want, or either or?
My understanding is that the businesses will say how they want this to be applied, so what medium they want. And my understanding was that there was funding created by the city to purchase these for the businesses, so that we don't actually create a situation like we do with the landmark plaques, where we have about 850 landmarks, and there's probably only 300 and some that actually have the plaque because they're required to purchase them.
Just one thought, I don't know if Evanston does this, but on I know Wilmette does, but on the lights where they hang, right now it's Pride Month, so there's pride flags on the lights, do we do that in Evanston? Because you could do a legacy business and have Benison's or, different ones in different parts to kind of help advertise.
Yeah, we do that. There are some of the special service areas that have something similar like that. And there are locations that have a really high concentration of these businesses. Like the west side of Davis Street has many legacy
Right.
businesses.
That's what I was thinking, yeah.
Noyes Street has a lot of a high concentration, and probably 6 legacy businesses in a very small business district. And Main Street as well, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking of that Davis Street corridor where you have Benison's and Ace and a couple others, and you could have those that signage in the corridor, and people, I don't know, just a thought.
I have just a curious question. What's the percentage of businesses that are retail versus service oriented? Do we know that?
Of the pilot candidates?
Yeah.
I don't know the percentages. What I can say is that there was a very conscious effort to create a lot of diversity in what those businesses, those pilot candidates were. So that's everything from auto repair and service stations to barbers and hairdressers and traditional restaurants and retail hardware stores. So it's
Interesting.
really expansive. And they
Architects,
you would
Architects.
qualify, yeah, you could.
26 years in Evanston, same location.
Check.
We'll put you on the list.
Anything else on that, or should we move on to the next? The image of Stuart with the legacy business thing around his head, like a halo.
Who knew?
Okay, moving on to subcommittee reports. Kate has a few things to say on this. It's been a busy month.
Yeah, I have quite a few updates that hopefully look longer on paper than, even though I can talk a lot, as everyone knows. The first thing that I really want to start with is just that we are tackling some initiatives through the diversity committee and also the education and advocacy subcommittees. One of the first things that those two in kind of combination, there's some overlap, was to look at active recruitment of commissioners. And I think what we found out through some digging is that the city doesn't do a great job of actively recruiting commissioners. They kind of leave it up to somebody to just figure it out and apply. And so trying to take some of what we do already as a city, but make it fit our needs instead of just a generalization of serve on a board, commissioner, committee at the city and a web link. And I think we have something like 26 boards and commissions in this city, which is a real monster to try to figure out where your interest lies and what actual opportunities and where vacancies exist. It's a little more difficult. So we did come up with this flyer. Those two committees, especially Commissioner Ziem, Chair Dreller, and Commissioner Jacobs, And to try to frame this in a very inclusive way, and look at both actively recruiting commissioners, but also acknowledging that we might want to attract just volunteers that could help with some of these initiatives who don't want to come to regularly scheduled meetings or sit and do case review. They might have a very specific interest and need that they can fill. Almost the commission used to have what we called associate members that kind of filled that void for a long time. And so I think what we're trying to do now is distribute this to a very wide and diverse audience to try to see if we can attract some new members. I will say that the mayor did recently nominate a new member. The nomination hasn't been approved by city council, but assuming that it is, we should have a new member as early as the next meeting in July. But then knowing that we still have one and then 2 vacancies that would be created after the September meeting, there's certainly a need to try to fill some of those seats.
Can I hop in?
Please, yeah.
I wanted to say a couple of things about this. One is that this, we're calling it a flyer, but I mean, probably won't be in paper form. It'll be something like a PDF that we send to people to try to circulate. I mean, maybe it'll be in paper someplace, but it's mainly meant to be posted and circulated around. So my hope was that we might get 1 or 2 people to work with us to kind of brainstorm where it should be sent. We already have a list that I was working on earlier today between Cade and Amanda and me. But it would be great if we could think outside of our bubbles and expand where it could be sent. So if anyone is interested in brainstorming with us, that would be great. Are you, okay, we have a volunteer. Thank you very much. We'll let you know when we're meeting, which is, I think, on Thursday. And then I thought if it was okay with you all that I would send you each an email that then you could, with this attached, and then you could then just forward that email to people that you think might be interested or might know someone who would be interested, or members of various community groups that you think might have some, might be able to help us find somebody, that kind of thing. So if that's okay with you all, I'm happy just to write an email to each of you that then you can forward along, and then you don't even have to come up with the email if you don't want to. Is that okay with everybody as a basic approach? Okay.
I think that's good. And is there a way to make it postable on LinkedIn? Something, a shorter blurb and a link?
So there's, is there supposed to be another variation on this, which is shorter, like a little JPEG or something? Or should we just have this as a JPEG also that then can just be uploaded as an image to LinkedIn?
I think that might be easier.
Because we have it as a PDF right now, right?
Correct, yeah.
Is it possible to get it as a JPEG as well?
Oh, it's very simple, yeah.
All right, so if you wouldn't mind sending that to me, and then I will attach it as a JPEG and as a PDF to this little, this is going to be a short 2-sentence email that you can just forward on. Okay. And then you all can download that and post it and do what you, and we have a variety of ideas of where we want to send it, not just put it on Facebook, but anyway, we'll be talking.
Cool.
So that was the idea behind that. And this was the working group plus the communication staff here at the city that came up with, chose the images and stuff. It's just as a background information. Okay, so that was what I wanted to say about that.
That's wonderful. This probably won't take long because I don't expect any answers immediately, but general just kind of thoughts about, we've had 2 kind of presentations now at the beginning of meetings that I think were pretty successful and informative, and it's a nice form of kind of advocacy. We can allow someone that aligns, or there's an intersection between their goals and ours, to come and have a public forum to present something. So I think it would be nice to hear from you or think about either ideas for specific individuals for future presenters or kind of topic areas, and then we can try to research individuals that would be willing to come and speak for 20 minutes or so at the beginning of a meeting.
We did try to get one person to come to this meeting since we knew there were only 2 cases, but she was not available, so she's hopefully going to come to another meeting at some point soon. Would this fall under the Education and Advocacy Subcommittee, do you guys think? Or would we just, yeah?
Yeah, I think it certainly could, or we can, at the same time, entertain just ideas from all commissioners to send.
So if they have some ideas, where does that go in that case?
I
Just
think they
goes to
could
you
send
and
it
me?
directly to me,
Or
and
to you.
then I could maybe compile that list and then circulate that to the Education Committee, perhaps.
I have just one thought. I would love to hear more about people that do renovations, how they get the tax freeze.
Yeah, that's a great, to have someone from the state give a
Yeah,
presentation.
about like maybe
Might be
what
possible. Mhm.
homeowners need to sort of think about in terms of criteria when they're like doing a renovation to qualify.
Yeah.
So that, the first project that we looked at, they were doing the
Saw
tax
that.
freeze, yeah.
Yeah. I was just going to say that I think the presentations offer a nice overlap between both information for us and the public, and in terms of kind of promoting the plan, because I think people, we're still trying to get over people's perception that when they think of the Preservation Commission, they're thinking of the Lakefront Historic District and, or the historic districts, and that's it, and not all the stuff that we've talked about in this plan. So it's not just kind of just the educational, but a way of getting kind of the expanded things that we cover out there by getting
Yeah.
this information.
The presentation that we were trying to get for this meeting, which hopefully will happen at some point soon, was about diversity, equity, and inclusion best practices in historic preservation, just so that you guys are of interest. But yeah, that's the idea, to try to use that first 15 or 20 or 25 minutes for something along those lines. So if you guys have any ideas, please send them along, see what we can do. So that was, need for additional subcommittee.
I think we covered that.
Okay.
In the first portion. So the only other items, and there's a few here, which is actually exciting, but just some updates on the Preserve 2040 plan and kind of implementation updates. One relates to previous conversation in the Education and Advocacy Subcommittee, as we were given the green light by the city for a quarterly newsletter, preservation newsletter. And I think it would be nice to have some, if anyone has ideas about writing content. We were told to keep it relatively brief and then more visual in the newsletter. So it'll probably be 5 sentences and a visual, and then a link to if you want more content or something longer. So it's not that big of a lift, I think, to ask for content, especially if it's just done quarterly. We did come up with or brainstorm some kind of content areas, myself and the communications team, but one was kind of a partner spotlight and upcoming activities. So there are partner organizations like Shorefront or the History Center, Francis Willard House, the Mitchell Museum. So have a very short kind of blurb about what they do, a link to their website, and maybe a list of some activities they have coming up, and do that quarterly. A resource spotlight or something like Did You Know, and give a brief history or information on a historic resource or a community story. I think Meet a Commissioner is a nice thing, is just to understand who sits on this commission and what their background is and their interests. Implementation updates for the plan itself, and then a section on technical assistance, more detailed aspects about how to find resources to repair or restore certain aspects of someone's home. But certainly I think we're open to anyone's ideas for content areas.
And I was just going to add, one of the things that we talked about was to try to get the newsletter going right away with just like a quick, like, hey, there's a newsletter. Not necessarily have much in it, except now that we have this flyer, to get the flyer distributed. So we may just have a quick, maybe I'll just write a quick note from us that just says, welcome to the quarterly newsletter or something, and distribute it to, you said there were 2,800 people on the list, to the 2,800 people that have already indicated that they're interested in Preservation Commission stuff, just to get it going. But then, if we say we have a quarterly newsletter, there needs to be another one. So I just wanted to make sure that everyone was okay with distributing the flyer in that way. So if it goes out in July, it would, or late June? Okay, so then when's the next quarter? Somebody help me with that. It's towards the end of the evening. It would be September?
September's the end of the quarter, yeah.
So we would need to populate the next quarterly newsletter with actual, something more than just, here's your newsletter. So anyway, that's just to give a sense of the timeline. Is everyone okay with that?
Are we, sorry, regarding the newsletter, are we all, like, is that just the education subcommittee that writes that? Or I'm wondering if I'm committing to writing something or not, because,
So we were assuming that would fall under the education subcommittee right now, which currently has 2 members. And if anyone would like to volunteer to be part of that, that would also be great, since I'm one of the 2. So I have a lot.
is, are you saying 2 members, 2 commissioners, or are there
2
also,
commissioners.
are there other, like, I think
Oh, yes,
Mary
and-
McWilliams also?
Right, and we have,
Is she, yeah, okay.
right,
Because
we
I-
have one, thank you for reminding me.
I think the role of that subcommittee, it doesn't have to be to write all the content, but
Right.
it could be soliciting individuals to provide content and then, kind of disseminating that and delivering that to me. Then-
Just so that it doesn't fall entirely on Kate or Kate and me. So if there's anyone else that wants to join John and me on that committee, subcommittee, that would be great, to help kind of populate the newsletter, and Mary. And, the Education and Advocacy Subcommittee can do other things. It doesn't have to be the newsletter if you're not interested in that. Did I say that right?
Yeah, I think that's great. I mean, for many, many, many years, that was really the foundation of the commission's advocacy and outreach, and it just kind of disappeared for a long time. And I think it's a good initiative to bring back, especially because I think we have more to say now, to your point, and more to be involved with, that people should know and be aware of.
I mean, there's already something about, that could be included about the Legacy Business Alliance. Like, it doesn't have to be new stuff, it just has, Yes. Well, if we have, for instance, if we have someone speaking, we can have a little blurb about that, just to kind of keep people in the loop. But, just to try to have it not fall all on Kate.
I just want to ask about the Harley Clark letter. Is that an update on that? Do we all sign it? Are we giving it to?
Yeah, I do have really brief Harley Clark updates, but yeah, everybody did sign it. It was delivered to the mayor, members of the city council. The really quick synopsis update for that is that I appeared before the city council, I don't know, maybe that was a few weeks ago, maybe it was a month ago. It seems like forever ago.
It was 3 weeks.
Yeah.
3 weeks ago.
And I asked them to issue what's called a request for expression of interest for the property. And there's all these RF blank insert whatever that are very convoluted, but essentially a request for expression of interest is the precursor to a request for proposals. Its intention is to gain increased interest in really what possibilities exist. So you're removing as many barriers as possible to understand what opportunities there are, and then you use that information to create a more viable RFP, which is part of the competitive bidding process where the RFEI is not. But they agreed to that. I think the vote was 5-3 when they took a vote. I think there's some genuine interest on the city council to be expeditious in finding a viable solution for the property that preserves it and retains it. I also think there is a good amount of interest in the community and development community as well. And that kind of leads me to the second, I think, implementation update from the plan, and these things are very related. But we have developed an adaptive use code, an amendment to the code, which got a unanimous recommendation from the Land Use Commission, so that'll move forward to the City Council. The things that are really critical about the adaptive use code and the language is that it allows any proposed use, so long as you can demonstrate that that use is the principal means of retaining a significant structure. In the instance of like the Harley Clark, that property is zoned open space with extremely limited use potential. There's a lot of, this is a national problem, but a lot of very architecturally significant churches that are zoned single family that have a very difficult time adapting those properties to a viable use because of those restrictions. The other very positive things in that code are eliminating parking requirements through this process, and also eliminating maximum density requirements to allow multifamily in what were previously buildings of assembly. So really the only thing that we didn't address that's kind of best practice, that's a much harder thing, is addressing the fire code, which is one that limits a lot of adaptive use. As you change the use, you have to meet current fire codes, and sprinkler in an old building is not an easy or inexpensive task, but I think it's a very significant update. This is something that almost every preservation plan has in it to try to do, and the fact that we were able to kind of implement that in the first year of this plan's existence is a big thing. I think that's everything I have.
Just thinking of potential speakers, I was recently at a traditional buildings conference, and there was a very great presentation from the guy in the planning department from the city of Aurora, who talked about creative use of fire code in historic buildings and reusing ways of interpreting the code that would allow for more creative uses. Just sharing that.
If you have the information from that and you want to forward it along to Cade, that would be great. If you have the agenda for your meeting or whatever it is that would be, because that's something we could use to know, I think. Anything else? No. Okay. Well, we are at the end of our, we have number 6, discussion, nothing under discussion. So I think that because this.
Unless anyone has general discussion.
General discussion stuff. Okay. All right, we can adjourn. It is 9:03 p.m.